Welcome back to the channel. I'm Kris. This is American Civil War, Battle of Shiloh. I feel like I could barely. Okay, Battle of Shiloh, the Devil's Own Day. I believe this Devil's Own Day Part 2. I believe Sherman says that to Grant. We've had the Devil's Own Day today. And then Grant says something like, yeah, but we'll lick him tomorrow. Something to that effect. It's a pretty good line. But anyways, if you are in the U.S. right now and there's that heat wave in the South and you're keeping up with the little drama recently with me in terms of my air conditioner going out, new capacitor came in today, hooked that bad boy up in about 2 minutes. I have air. Very nice. I thought the motor was out for the blower, for the fan or something like that. But I hit the, I can't think of the name now, the little reticulating button, and the compressor kicked on, so I knew, okay, well, it's not the issue. But it was 2 minutes. But it was up to about 85 in the house. And then put that in, and it's down to like 79 right now, so it's getting down. Not in this area, in this room right here. No, this is different. There's no air here, minus a window unit, so it's a little different. But that's not what we're here for. We are here for part 2 of this video, and we're going to go ahead and get into the video right now. For people who don't know, I am a giant Ulysses S. Grant fan. I am just a giant fan of his. And, you know, he did some good in the presidency. He had some bad people around him, stuff like that. But I'm just a fan of the man, just as a whole.
In the early morning hours of April 6, 1862, Union Colonel Everett Peabody, commanding the 1st Brigade of Brigadier General Benjamin M. Prentice's 6th Division, organizes a patrol of 3 companies from the 21st Missouri and 2 companies from the 12th Michigan, under overall command of Major James Edwin Powell. Unlike many officers in the federal camp around Pittsburgh Landing, Colonel Peabody, with his 1st Brigade positioned in the forward lines of the entire Army camp, suspects that the Confederates are up to something, and had expressed his concerns to General Prentice, who dismissed them. Acting totally on his own authority, Colonel Peabody orders Major Powell, an experienced old Army officer, to march down the Sheffield Road and seek out the enemy. Quietly, the Federals file off into the darkness. As Major Powell's patrol nears the Corinth-Pittsburgh Road, 3/4 of a mile southwest of the camp, they are suddenly fired upon by Confederate cavalry vedettes. Not realizing the danger ahead, the major hurriedly formed his 250 men into a skirmish line and advances into J.J. Fraley's field. Ahead, shrouded under the cover of darkness, is Brigadier General Sterling A. M. Wood's 3rd Brigade of Major General William J. Hardee's 3rd Corps. At long last, the Federals have discovered the advancing Confederate Army. Major Aaron B. Hardcastle's 3rd Mississippi Infantry Battalion, armed with 280 muskets, have been thrown forward as skirmishers for General Wood's brigade. At about 4:50 a.m., as the shadowy forms of Powell's skirmishers close to within 200 yards, Major Hardcastle's Mississippians opened fire with a deadly musket volley from the tree line. The Battle of Shiloh, or Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, had begun. For the next hour, as sunlight begins to streak the sky, both sides of skirmishers doggedly trade blows, each refusing to give way. From his brigade headquarters, Colonel Peabody hears the faint musket shots to the southwest. A messenger arrives from Major Powell, indicating that his patrol is being driven back. Moments later, the firing off in the distance doubles in its intensity. The colonel jumps to his feet and immediately orders a long roll sounded throughout the camp. General Prentiss soon gallops into camp and angrily accuses Colonel Peabody of bringing on a general engagement with the enemy, a violation of Major General Halleck's standing order. Peabody, mounting on a horse, snappily salutes and is heard to say, "If I brought on the fight, I am to lead the van." From his headquarters at Cherry Mansion on the opposite side of the Tennessee River in Savannah, Major General Ulysses S. Grant and his field staff are preparing to eat breakfast when they hear the opening shots of the battle across the river. With their breakfast brought to a halt, Grant looks to his staff and says, "Gentlemen, the ball is in motion."
So, tell me about your bond.
Yeah, she's the first one to email me on my birthday every year.
I never miss it because it's automated through Constant Contact.
I've never been in a relationship.
All right, where's Udino? We need him on here. I'll never stop. That guy's awesome. We were dumbfounded by seeing an enormous force of Confederate troops marching directly toward us. Private in the 21st Missouri Infantry.
Colonel Peabody advances his troops about a quarter-mile south in line of battle and halts on a slightly inclined wooded ridge on a branch of Shiloh Creek. There, Peabody's men listen intently to the din of musket fire drawing closer from the south. Stumbling ahead in the semi-darkness is General Hardee's assault line, some 9,000 Confederate soldiers. Meanwhile, Colonel Madison Miller, leading Prentiss's 2nd Brigade, hurriedly forms his brigade on Peabody's left, taking position on the south edge of Peter Spain's field at 7:30. Captain Andrew Hickenlooper's 5th Ohio Battery unlimbers in the northwest corner of Spain Field, east of the Eastern Corinth Road. Also anchoring Miller's right is Captain Emil Munt's 1st Minnesota Battery, placed astride the country road. At about 7:30 a.m., Peabody's troops, standing in line, suddenly see the enemy emerge from the woods ahead. Confronting the Federals is the right wing of Wood's brigade, along with Colonel Robert G. Shaver's 1st Brigade of mostly Arkansas troops. The opening Federal volleys cause the Southerners to stagger to a halt. Some units, such as the 55th Tennessee, even run pell-mell to the rear shouting, "Retreat! Retreat!" However, within 1 hour, Peabody's line has been overlapped, and his men fall back to their encampments. Although suffering 4 wounds, Peabody remains on the field, attempting to rally the troops. He suddenly throws up his arms, reels back, and falls dead from his horse. A fatal bullet had struck him in the head, killing the colonel instantly.
Wow.
At about 8 a.m., Miller's 2nd Brigade is attacked by Brigadier General Adlai H. Gladden's 1st Brigade of Joan M. Withers' 2nd Division and Bragg's 2nd Corps. The Southerners advance under a galling storm of musketry and artillery fire, and soon hundreds of men recoil across the entire Southern line. General Gladden is carried off the field mortally wounded. Despite horrible losses, the Confederates launch a 2nd assault at 8:30. With Gladden's men reinforced by Brigadier General James Chalmers' 2nd Brigade of Mississippians and Tennesseans. The southern advance collides with Miller's front. An intense fire consumes the Federal line, and within minutes of this renewed attack, 59 of Prentiss's artillery horses are shot down in their traces. Hickenlooper loses 2 guns, but Captain Munch, although wounded, gets all of his pieces away. The badly scattered Federal ranks from Peabody's brigade stream back through their tents, firing from behind trees and bales of hay. Ambulances race to the rear as frantic soldiers jump on, fighting off their comrades. Surgeon Samuel Ells of the 12th Michigan is tending the wounded when the Confederates suddenly burst into the hospital tent and level their guns at him. By 8:45 a.m., Peabody's 1st Brigade has been rolled up, and his camps were in enemy possession. Panic strikes many of the young Federals from Miller's brigade as they flee through their camps. The victorious Confederates, under the supervision of Johnston, Hardee, and Bragg, sweep forward. By 9 a.m., Prentiss's 2 brigades, a total of 5,400 effectives, have been swept away, and the Confederates appear on the verge of a great victory in the wooded thickets of western Tennessee. At 7 a.m., Major General William Tecumseh Sherman, commanding the 5th Division of Grant's army.
I like William Tecumseh Sherman. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the South that don't like him. I'm thinking of you, Greg. I'm sure that, you know, they think what he did in the South was a pure violation of everything human. And yeah, in a way, I would agree, but we won't talk. That's for a different video. But I am a Sherman fan, and I want to visit his grave in St. Louis, Missouri.
Rides into Ray Field with his staff. As he looks south through his binoculars at a body of enemy troops in the distance, he remarks that there might be a sharp skirmish. An officer then abruptly calls his attention to the right. Sherman views a line of Confederate skirmishers emerging from the woods, lining the creek to the west. Throwing up his hands, Sherman exclaims, "My God, we are attacked!" Shots ring out, and the general's orderly falls dead from his horse, and a bullet strikes Sherman's raised hand. Sherman instructs Colonel Jesse J. Appler of the 53rd Ohio, deployed in skirmish line after hearing the earlier shots, to hold his ground, and then gallops off to mobilize the rest of his 5th Division. Advancing through the swampy thickets choking the valley of Shiloh branch are the troops of 34-year-old Irish-born Patrick R. Cleburne. His regiments become separated as they struggle forward through the boggy morass. Cleburne himself is unceremoniously thrown from his horse into the mud. Clearing the ravine, 2 of his regiments on the right of the brigade line, the 6th Mississippi and 23rd Tennessee Infantry, advance eastward unsupported against the 53rd Ohio's position. The 2 Confederate regiments meet a hail of bullets from Appler's regiment and the rest of Colonel Jesse Hildebrand's 3rd Brigade posted in line to the north. Also severe blasts of Union artillery fired from Captain Allen C. Waterhouse's Battery E, 1st Illinois Light Artillery, deployed in front of its camp, on a knoll along the northern end of Ray Field, and Captain Samuel Barrett's Battery B, 1st Illinois Light Artillery, located 400 yards northwest at Shiloh Church, tear huge holes in the Confederate formation. When under the murderous Federal crossfire, the 23rd Tennessee breaks and flees, and the men of the 6th Mississippi attempt 2 additional solo assaults. By the time the smoke clears, some 300 of the regiment's 425 men lay dead and wounded in Ray Field, a staggering 70.5%. At the very moment when Appler's troops are winning the brief, murderous engagement, the colonel suddenly cries out, "Retreat and save yourselves!" The Buckeyes flee north in disorder, with Appler in the lead, falling back across each branch ravine of Shiloh Creek. Appler reforms part of the 53rd Ohio behind the 3rd Brigade of Colonel Julius Wright, part of Major General McClernand's 1st Division, which had been ordered forward to reinforce Sherman's division. Appler's men continued to combat the Confederates for about another hour, when the shaken colonel again loses his nerve and orders another retreat. Fleeing northward, most of the 53rd Ohio flees toward the landing. Despite being reinforced by Wright's brigade, by 9:30 a.m., as more Confederate brigades are thrown into the fray, Jesse Hildebrand's brigade begins to fall apart. The defense of Sherman's left now rests upon 2 artillerists from Chicago, Captain Barrett and Captain Waterhouse. Astride the Corinth Road near the church, Barrett's battery holds firm as its infantry support on the left phase, while Waterhouse continues to defend the northern end of Ray Field southeast of the church.
I like that painting. Oh, jeez, what did I pause it? Come on. Tell Grant if he has any men to spare.
Initially, Colonel Ralph Buckland's 4th Brigade, occupying Sherman's center, had held both the numerical and terrain advantage in the fight against the left segment of Cleburne's brigade. Even so, when Cleburne's Confederates explode from a creek bottom, Buckland's line is hit with such a force that for a short time, his men waver. The Federals hold firm, however, driving Cleburne's disorganized regiments back into the woods bordering Shiloh Creek. At 8:30, elements of the 2nd Confederate Battle Line, part of the 2nd Corps, commanded by the Marinette Major General Braxton Bragg, slam against Sherman's position. Already the Southern lines are beginning to intermingle and command line of authority is rapidly disappearing. Brigadier General Patton Anderson's brigade of Bragg's corps assaults Waterhouse's battery but is subjected to a terrible enfilade fire from Barrett's guns. At 9, Colonel Robert M. Russell's and Brigadier General Bushrod Johnson's brigades of Polk's 1st Corps join in the chaotic fray below Shiloh Church. About to be overwhelmed, Waterhouse's cannoneers hastily withdraw their guns, but not before 3 pieces are captured. After the collapse of Prentice's division, General Johnston directs 5 Confederate brigades to advance north and west behind Peabody's captured camp. This mass movement turns Sherman's left flank, helps break up Hildebrand's brigade, and forces Sherman to abandon his camps. The Union general orders Buckland and Colonel John A. McDowell, whose brigade anchors Sherman's right to Owl Creek, to retire their commands upon McClernand's 1st Division. General McClernand has deployed his division in line of battle along the Hamburg-Purdy Road, a quarter-mile behind Sherman's initial front. Suffering from a nasty hand wound, for nearly 3 hours Sherman has put up a stubborn defense at Shiloh Church, a Hebrew name ironically translating as place of peace.
Let this be my share of spoils today.
By late morning, the initial Confederate drive is beginning to lose momentum. Many Southern soldiers have stopped to plunder captured Federal camps. When General Johnston discovers an officer looting in Prentice's camp, he chides him. "None of that, sir. We are not here for plunder." Observing that he had shamed the man in front of his men, the general softens his tone and, picking up a tin cup, quips, "Let this be my share of the spoils today." Serious tactical problems have also developed for the Confederates. Since the capture of Prentice's camp, the initial sweeping right flank movement has degenerated into a series of massive frontal assaults. Hundreds of men have been killed and wounded in the opening assaults on Prentice and Sherman, and attrition is already a serious Confederate problem. The organization of several brigades have been broken. Patrick Cleburne's and Bushrod Johnson's brigades are shattered in furious, disorganized frontal attacks against the Union right defending the main Corinth Road. Before noon, Brigadier General John C. Breckinridge's troops, along with Brigadier General John K. Jackson's brigade, slam head-on into Brigadier General Stephen A. Hurlbut's division and John MacArthur's brigade at the Bell Farm. This leaves only Chalmers' Mississippi and Tennessee brigade, along with Colonel James Clanton's 1st Alabama Cavalry, to attempt a sweep around the Federal left flank, deployed on the commanding ridge north of the confluence of Locust Grove Branch and Lick Creek. Commanding the isolated Federal brigade is a 46-year-old former Chicago lawyer, Colonel David Stewart. Assigned to Sherman's division, Stewart's 2nd Brigade of 30 regiments have been posted by General Sherman to guard the Hamburg Road ford over Lick Creek. The 55th Illinois Infantry, the extreme left of Grant's army, had pitched their tents in Larkin Bell's Peach Orchard. To Stewart's right, Hurlbut's division deploys slightly northwest at Sarah Bell's farm, several hundred yards away. At about 11 a.m., Stewart's infantry, unsupported by artillery, received the full brunt of Chalmers and Jackson's attacks. As a result of the initial Confederate artillery bombardment, Stewart loses all contact with one of his regiments, which has retreated several hundred yards northwest to a new defensive position behind the camp. Heavily outnumbered, Stewart is forced to retire his remaining men several hundred yards to a prominent wooded ridge located east of his camp. There, under the cover of the trees, he pieces together a stable defense. With his 2 short-handed regiments, for 2 hours, this small force of 1,200 men stubbornly contests Chalmers' further advance north. Finally, having suffered heavy casualties and with their ammunition exhausted, Stuart orders his hard-pressed soldiers from the line. Moving northwest through several deep ravines, Stuart's men retreat to the river road behind Hurlbut's and MacArthur's men, who now assume full responsibility for holding the Union left. Stuart marches his survivors to the landing, where he obtains ammunition for the depleted cartridge boxes. Each side produces many heroes that bloody day at Shiloh. Colonel David Stuart, finding a pre-war reputation as a scoundrel, would be one of them.
Don't buy another bug zapper until you watch this short demonstration video.
Okay.
This invention eliminates all mosquitoes in the area within 6 minutes, making it 7 times more efficient than
The rugged terrain across the battlefield, combined with pockets of stiff Federal resistance, continued to stall the Confederate advance. Since the Confederate corps had been badly intermingled, the corps commanders were forced to divide the wide 3-mile front into 4 sections. Hardee holds the left, Polk the left center, and Bragg the right center. Behind them, Beauregard continues to monitor the battle from his field headquarters on the Corinth Road south of Shiloh Church. Meanwhile, Breckinridge has moved to the right of the line where Sidney Johnston provides overall leadership. Between 11 and 11:30, in close quarter hand-to-hand fighting, the massive assault by the Confederate left overruns the Union right, inflicting horrendous Federal casualties and capturing 17 cannon along with most of McClernand's camp. The Union line retreats 1,500 yards north into Jones Field, where Generals Sherman and McClernand work frantically to reform their shattered ranks. Rallying their ravaged forces in Jones Field, McClernand and Sherman manage to secure much needed fresh soldiers. Sherman locates McDowell's missing brigade in Sowell Field to the west and quickly advances his Illinois, Iowa, Ohio brigade south against the Confederate left. On Sherman's left, General McClernand's battered division, now reinforced by 2 Iowa regiments, sent forward from the landing by Grant, also advances. At noon, a united countercharge by the Union right rolls across a rugged terrain toward Wolf Field, where the Federals capture the guns of Cobb's Kentucky battery. Caught off guard, the Confederates are pressed back to the Hamburg-Purdy Road. Alarmed by this new threat, Beauregard locates Colonel Robert Trabu's brigade, the only fresh brigade left in the army, and advances it against the Union right to stem further advance. Meanwhile, along with Hardee and Polk, Beauregard works to reorganize the disorganized and commingled forces on the Confederate left to regain the initiative from the determined Federals. For nearly 2 hours, the tide of battle rolls back and forth, first one side gaining ground, then losing it back to the enemy. Thousands fall on both sides. However, by 2:30 p.m., the Federals have once again been pressed back north into Jones Field.
I know some about the battle, but this is the first time I'm actually watching kind of like an animation or not a diagram, but the battlefield layout and everything like that. So I'm kind of, instead of just reading about it to where you're just kind of thinking what it could look like. So I'm not talking a whole lot, and I do apologize for that, but I'm just kind of, I'm soaking it in. If you don't know anything about the battle, then this is interesting to you. So I'm the same way. It's the first time I've seen, I can visualize it. To me, test. I don't want to hear that.
In answer to Prentice's early morning pleas for assistance at 8:30 a.m., Brigadier General William H.L. Wallace advanced 2 of his brigades from their camps located west of the landing to the edge of Duncan's farm on the eastern Corinth Road. There, Wallace's advanced brigade under Colonel James Tuttle strikes the remnants of Prentice's shattered division 1½ miles southwest of the landing. Realizing that Prentice's division has been defeated, Wallace's men quickly form a defensive line to block further southern advance up the eastern Corinth Road. Some 3,700 of Wass's 5,800 available troops are placed along an old wagon road that connects the Corinth Road with the Hamburg-Savannah Road. In between Wass's left, south of the Eastern Corinth Road, and the right of Hurlbut's line located slightly southeast of Sarabell's Field, about 500 men from the remnants of Prentice's broken division joined 575 members of the 23rd Missouri who had marched inland from the landing, taking position after 10 o'clock. In all, Wass, Prentice, and Hurlbut deploy about 5,700 Federal infantry along a small half-mile section of the Union front. Supporting the Federal infantry massed along the sunken road, as the old wagon road would become known in the decades following the battle, were 6 batteries of artillery totaling 25 guns. Fronting 400 yards of the northern half of the Union position, which faces west-southwest, is Joseph Duncan's large field. The southern half of the center section of the Union front runs through a dense thicket south of the field. At mid-morning, Grant had personally inspected the position and ordered his division commanders to hold at all hazards. As the Union center stiffens, Major General Benjamin F. Cheatham personally leads Colonel William H. Stevens' brigade into position near the junction of the Hamburg-Purdy and Eastern Corinth roads, 450 yards southwest of the Federal center. Following an hour-long artillery duel, the Southerners are ordered to advance into the dense underbrush at the double quick. They make it to within 100 paces of the Union line before being driven back by a galling fire. Repulsed with heavy casualties, Cheatham retires the brigade and moves to join Breckinridge in the attacks on Hurlbut's front in Sarabell's Field. As Cheatham extracts Stevens' cut-up command, several intermingled Confederate commands, some 3,500 men under General Claiborne and Brigadier General Alexander P. Stewart and Brigadier General Thomas C. Hinman, attempt a second assault on the Federal center. As the Confederates start forward, Colonel Robert Shaver discovers that his 2,000 men have run out of ammunition. Unable to proceed further, Shaver retires his brigade before the Southern line has advanced to within 250 yards of the Union front. Weakened by Shaver's rapid withdrawal, the remaining attacking Confederates are easily beaten off by the heavy volume of Union musketry and cannon fire.
Hi, it's Nancy from the International Rescue Committee. I'm at Przemyśl train station in Poland, where many people are arriving on trains from Lviv, transiting through to other areas of...
I like this painting too.
At noon, Major General Braxton Bragg arrives opposite the Federal center and assumes command of the Confederates facing the thicket. Despite 2 previous failures, Bragg continues to launch piecemeal Confederate attacks by ordering Colonel Randall Lee Gibson's brigade of Louisiana and Arkansas troops into the Federal meat grinder. Gibson's brigade, like those Confederate units who had earlier attacked the Union center, stumbles forward through a near impenetrable thicket lining the Eastern Corinth Road south of Duncan Field. Impressed by the sound of the enemy bullets and shrapnel cutting through the dense underbrush, which seems to whiz and buzz like a swarm of hornets, Gibson's survivors dubbed the thicket the Hornet's Nest. The Federals reserve their fire until the Confederates are within 20 yards of them. They would then simultaneously open fire, mowing down Southern troops with deadly precision in each volley. His brigade repulsed by the murderous Federal fire, Randall Gibson desperately appeals to General Bragg for artillery support, but the general only orders another assault. When Colonel Henry Watkins Allen of the 4th Louisiana Infantry questions the order, Bragg snaps, "Colonel Allen, I want no faltering now." The wounded Louisiana colonel, shot in the mouth, a bullet having passed through both cheeks, waves his sword in one hand, supporting the regimental colors in his other, shouts, "Here, boys, is as good a place as any on this battlefield to meet death." And meet death they do. In 2 short hours, the brigade is badly damaged in 3, perhaps 4, futile assaults into the well-defended thicket. About 2:30 p.m., Gibson withdraws his survivors to a position of support in the rear. Never accepting his role in ordering near suicidal frontal attacks against superior enemy forces occupying a position of great natural strength, Bragg later writes to his wife that Gibson was an arrant coward. With Gibson's brigade knocked out of action, Colonel Shaver's brigade, with 3 regiments, about 1,500 men present and resupplied with fresh ammunition, is called forward from Prentice's captured camp to attack the Federal center again. Surging into the thicket, Lieutenant Colonel John M. Dean of the 7th Arkansas lead the men of his regiment to within 20 paces of the enemy line, occupying the old wagon road before falling under a hail of bullets. Finding his dead body, an Iowa captain respectively places a handkerchief over his face. At about 3:30 p.m., Patton Anderson's brigade redeploys from where it had been fighting for 6 hours on the Confederate left to a position opposite the Union center and proceeds to bash itself against the stubborn hornet's nest. In moving through the underbrush, Anderson meets a portion of the 13th Louisiana Infantry of Gibson's brigade retiring from the dense thicket. Anderson reported later, "Its officer informed me that I could not get through the brush." He nonetheless pushes his men on through a fierce fire until forced back. Anderson later stated, "The thicket was so dense that it was impossible for a company officer to be seen at platoon distance." Anderson's men, like several thousand Southern soldiers before them, are repulsed by the Federal firestorm. From the Federal perspective, the fighting is equally vicious. The 9th Illinois Infantry suffers the highest casualties of any Illinois regiment at the Battle of Shiloh, losing 366 of their men in the brutal battle in the Hornet's Nest. The 8th Iowa Infantry clashes in bloody hand-to-hand bayonet combat with Louisiana troops during the thick of the fighting, and many of the regiment's men are captured. Death is everywhere in the Hornet's Nest.
The ground was literally covered, I'm saying, with the dead. The wounded have been taken away. In several places could see dead men and horses piled up with dismounted.
Acting more like a unit commander than an army head, General Johnston becomes obsessed with the fighting around the Sarabelle Peach Orchard. To the southeast of the Hornet's Nest, 2 brigades of Breckinridge's corps, those of Colonel Winfield S. Stanham and Brigadier General John S. Bowen, are ordered across the Hamburg-Purdy Road to attack Hurlbut's division holding Sarabelle's Old Cotton Field and Peach Orchard, and MacArthur's brigade of W.H.L. Wallace's division deployed east of the River Road. In vain do Breckinridge's troops attempt to break the Federal left center. Johnson places himself in harm's way while advancing into the Sarabelle field. His uniform has been ripped by mini balls in several places and the heel of a boot cut away. Unknown to either himself or his staff, the Confederate leader has been mortally wounded. A bullet has entered Johnson's right leg behind the knee, cutting an artery. Although he is bleeding to death, the wound is masked by Johnson's high hoot. At about 2 p.m., Tennessee Governor Isham...
I believe he was wearing a boot. He was shot through the back of the knee, severed the artery, but because of the boot that he was wearing, it was like up to his knee. It was just, the blood was just draining into the boot, and so no one knew that he was gonna die, you know.
G. Harris, who is present at the battle in Johnson's staff, sees General Johnston reel in his saddle. Harris asks, "General, are you wounded?" Johnston replies, "Yes, and I fear seriously." Assisted by Captain Lee Wickman, Harris guides the general's horse south to a nearby ravine, placing the unconscious Johnston on the ground. The aides frantically tear open the general's shirt in search of a wound but find nothing. A simple tourniquet might have saved his life, but is not to be. The general never speaks a word, but continues to breathe for about a half hour. By 2:30 p.m., it is apparent that General Albert Sidney Johnston is dead. About 3 p.m., Governor Harris reports to General Beauregard near Shiloh Church and informs him of Johnston's death. The fighting would continue under the Louisiana general's direction. Confederate forces on the left flank now experience a series of ammunition shortages. At the same time, Sherman's and McClernand's battered divisions are withdrawing across the wide and deep valley of Tillman Branch Ravine. There they form a new front to protect the river road and the important Snake Creek Bridge, where Lew Wallace's division is still expected to cross onto the battlefield. After obtaining the much-needed resupplies of ammunition for batteries and infantry commands, the majority of the southern left flank units, which had until now grappled with Grant's right flank, redeploy and advance southeast toward the right flank of the Union's Hornets' Nest line. Confederate forces on the southern right flank make slower progress, hindered by steep, overgrown ravines and continued stubborn resistance by Hurlbut's men.
Yell, boys, you have a right to shout, for you have this day captured the bravest brigade in the United States Army.
By mid-afternoon, Brigadier General...
How do you know what Patty likes?
Well, constant contacts data shows me what Patty responds to.
I didn't know what I liked until I met.
By mid-afternoon, Brigadier General Daniel Ruggles, commanding the 1st Division in Bragg's Corps, sensed the futility of further attacks on the heavily defended Hornets' Nest sector. He thus instructs staff officers to collect artillery in an attempt to hammer the position into submission. Likewise, Beauregard begins to shift forces, including several batteries of artillery, from the left to the center, in response to reports of heavy concentrations of Union forces blocking the southern advance there. In addition, individual Confederate battery commanders, without instructions by superiors, personally redeploy their field batteries to engage the stubborn federal defense holding the Union center. The result of this hour and a half of shifting and deploying cannon is that by 4:30 p.m., all or parts of 11 southern batteries have been assembled opposite the Hornets' Nest. Tradition, including General Ruggles himself, has placed the number at 62, but 53 is probably a more accurate number of cannon employed at any one time in the resulting bombardment. For the next 30 to 45 minutes, the massed Confederate Grand Battery, nicknamed Ruggles Battery, hammers the Hornets' Nest with the largest and most intense field artillery concentration yet experienced on any North American battlefield. Raining down shot and shell in their heavily concentrated bombardment, Ruggles Battery succeeds in driving off the remaining Federal batteries supporting the Union Hornets' Nest line. Although a significant portion of the Federal left under General Hurlbut makes a stubborn temporary stand at Wicker Field, by 4 p.m., Grant's left is making a rapid fighting withdrawal towards Pittsburgh Landing. This move exposes Prentice's left flank in the Hornets' Nest, forcing him to refuse his left, which now faces to the southeast, and engage the Confederates swarming up the river road. A similar retreat occurs on William H.L. Wallace's right by McClernand's division, leaving the Union forces holding the Federal center isolated. General Wallace is stunned to learn of the breakup of Colonel Sweeney's brigade on his right. Many of Sweeney's men have retreated with McClernand's troops. Sweeney breakups permit the Confederates moving up on the left to turn the right flank of Wallace's line and penetrate into the Federal rear. At 5 p.m., both Wallace and Prentice dispatch orders for the men to withdraw. But already thousands of Southerners are advancing rapidly around both Wallace's and Prentice's exposed flanks to threaten a complete envelopment of the Union center. In the ensuing confusion, some Union troops managed to shoot their way out and escape toward the landing through a narrow outlet along the Corinth Road, but others never received the orders. About 5:30 p.m., after 6 hours of heavy fighting, the Hornets' Nest defense finally collapses. Most of the Federal units are surrendered individually by their field officers. William H.L. Wallace has been mortally wounded and left for dead on the field. Meanwhile, General Prentice surrenders in a heavily wooded area dubbed Hell's Hollow. In all, Confederates capture some 2,250 men. As the triumphant Southerners send up a loud cheer, a still defiant Benjamin Prentice says, "Yell, boys, you have a right to shout, for you have this day captured the bravest brigade in the United States Army." As the white flags of surrender are raised throughout the smoke-filled forest, some Federal units attempting to escape still continue the fight. The situation is both confusing and deadly for several minutes. Other Union soldiers who had surrendered defiantly smashed their muskets against trees so that the weapons could not fall into enemy hands. Colonel William T. Shaw, commanding the 4th Iowa Infantry, is nearly knocked insensible by a low branch as he attempts to escape. When he regains his wits, he looks up to see a major of the 9th Mississippi standing over him saying, "I think you will have to surrender." Meanwhile, a couple of Confederate cavalrymen snatch the flag of the 12th Iowa and drag it unceremoniously through the mud. The courageous stand made by Wallace's and Prentice's men have gained the surviving Federal forces precious time. Since 4 p.m., the Hornet's Nest has occupied the full attention of the majority of Confederate forces still effectively engaged on the field. Now, with darkness casting a shadow over the field, the hour is getting late for Beauregard's Confederates.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so this was when Sherman, I'm guessing this is Sherman, says we've had the devil's own day today, and that's what I said. Grant says, yeah, I'll lick them tomorrow though.
Throughout the evening of April 6, Major General Ulysses S. Grant begins consolidating a final line of defense along Pittsburgh Landing. The rugged terrain and defensive positions of Pittsburgh Landing allows for a suitable defense by Grant's tired and exhausted army. Heavy and sporadic fighting continues throughout the evening until about 6:30 p.m. with darkness settling over the battlefield. General Beauregard orders the Confederate attacks to halt. He is determined to continue the fight the next day and smash what is left of the Union Army of the Tennessee. During the night of April 6th, 7th, a torrential downpour of rain soaks the tired, exhausted, and bloodied soldiers of the North and South. The flashes of lightning briefly illuminate the battlefield of mangled and mutilated corpses, and the sounds of moaning from the wounded and dying sprawled across the battleground leaves a bone-chilling scene that none present on the battlefield that night would ever forget. Throughout the night, the gunboats USS Lexington and Tyler continue to bombard the Confederate lines, ensuring that the Southerners get no sleep during the rainstorm. Meanwhile, nearly 20,000 men from Major General Don Carlos Buell's Army of the Ohio, having arrived at Savannah that evening, are ferried across the Tennessee River in boatloads, reinforcing Grant's battered and exhausted Army of the Tennessee with an entire army of fresh and battle-ready troops. Grant begins preparation for an all-out counterattack with both his and Buell's armies the next morning. When General Sherman finds General Grant under a tree at his field headquarters that night, smoking a cigar and looking down at the rain-soaked ground, Sherman remarks, "Well, Grant, we've had the devil's own day, haven't we?" Grant looks up from the ground and replies simply, "Yes, look 'em tomorrow, though."
The confidence. Just the confidence. That was the one thing that Grant did have. He just had this confidence that it was gonna work out. You know, he's on the video that I saw when they talked about, you know, military commanders. He was, I think, the highest American one. But yeah, I mean, Grant just kind of had an ability to look past the bad parts and focus on what needed to be done. I know he wept at times, you know, on all the deaths, but unfortunately, it's a cost of doing business in war. You don't want to lose people. No one wants to lose people, but it is what it is. Well, I'm going to end this, and I think I'm going to call it a night for my videos, but you won't know that. But thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Have a good night.